All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 6 of Golden Dice Podcast. And of course, with me, I have my trusty, reliable, knowledgeable co-host, Tommy.
Well, that was an unwarranted intro, but thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
And sadly, we have an untrusty, unreliable, and pretty idiotic third person here with us. And it's Tommy's little brother.
Oh!
No name. Just Tommy's little brother. We got Shane with us this week.
I'm literally tied up in Jack's basement, and he's forcing me to do this.
Well, we promised them Jankku Jankyard, which we'll get to later. So basically, we need you for that. But, bringing you on halfway through would be weird. So I guess we kind of had to have you.
Appreciate it.
But I also, I'm just, so disappointed at the level of our podcast. Like, if you look at Knights of Ren and the guests that they had this past week on their 505 legacies, right? They had, Pearl Yeti, Agent of Zion, Taxter, Zach Bunn, Eric Wainwright, and we have Shane. It's not quite there yet.
It's so sad. I'm literally crying right now. It's horrible. It's horrible. I thought this was my one escape, my getaway, but no, he even followed me here. Have your own life, Shane. Jeez.
This is like a company's last ditch effort to do something special before we go out of business.
It's pretty much like Tide reacting to the Tide Pod incidents by having all those commercials at the Super Bowl. It's like the same exact thing.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
PR.
Basically 100% the same thing.
First comment's going to be, how can I unlisten to this?
We're a minute and 40 seconds in. How can I have that time back? Oh my gosh. All right. So normally we start off with weekly tournament, which neither of you guys went to any, right? You guys didn't do the Wednesday?
No, I was trying. Life came up. Gets in the way.
I feel that. So I was there Monday. We won't spend too long on it just because it was me, but I turned to the dark side and ran Poe Hondo. I actually like it for the deck that it is, not just because, it's winning right now, but of course, I'm trying to play the best deck, of course, for regionals and stuff, but it gives that feel of kind of like a mid-range and choking a little bit deck, which is something I kind of like. Yeah, I basically just took the deck from the Portland Regional, I believe. I basically just took that deck and kept basically everything. I dropped the 2 planetaries and put 2 X8 snipers in, and I dropped Sound the Alarm for a second easy pickings, just because I feel like Sound the Alarm is just going to lose value with the more special chaining and mill decks that'll be popping up. And X8 will be really nice late game when they're just paying me. I'll be able to flip it to 3 damage and then still be able to pay for it probably. So those were the only changes I made, and I did pretty well. I beat Zeb Kanan first game. It was super tough, super grindy, because he played 2 second chances and he healed twice with Ancients. So that's, a 26 health Zeb, if I can add.
It's a lot of life.
Right? He's 12 normal. Yeah, plus 10 from 2 second chances, and then plus 4 from 2 Ancients. But it came down to the end, and he had to Force Illusion the 3 damage coming in, or he would have died. And those were his last 3 cards in the deck. So that got rid of both of his Ancients. Basically, at that point, I was able to just kind of keep withering him down and close out the game, which was nice. And that's where the X8 came into super, super clutch. He kept paying me because he didn't want to take damage. And then I would just flip to the X8, and he didn't really have mitigation. He had 1 card in hand. So second round was Ezeb E-Ray. So I got to face that ugly last Lasat again. This one went pretty well, right? Zeb didn't roll too well. And that's the downside of Ray a little bit. Running with him is you're hoping for good rolls. So nothing too crazy there. And the last round, Finn Luke had one of the heart-stopping plays. It was I knew I had to claim because I had defensive position in my hand. And I was like, I'm going to need this for next turn. So I claimed, did 3 damage because it was with my battlefield, Emperor's Throne Room. And then he rolled out Finn, and he rolled the 2 black damage sides on Finn, the +3 on Overkill, the +2 on the DH-17, and the 2-for-1 on another DH-17. And at that moment, I was so happy I had claimed, because if not, I would have been blown off the board. So yeah, that was just basically a dead round for him then, and I was able to come back and I think kill him at the end of that round just because of the fact that he wasn't able to resolve any dice, which was nice. And then yeah, just went 3-0, so nothing too crazy, but I don't think anybody needs to hear from me that Poe Hondo is a good deck. Most people probably already knew that, but I'm enjoying playing it. I'm just worried that people will probably learn how to play against Hondo as time passes by, because he is a little tricky character at first, but with him popping up all over the place with Yoda and Poe, people kind of learn how to play around it a little bit more. So who knows? I won't be going to a regional this weekend. Tommy will be, so we'll see what I decide on in a month, and Rivals will also be in play at that point, so who knows?
I like your changes to it, though. I like the Night Sniper in there. It's actually pretty interesting, because one of the counters is just paying him. If you have the resources, if you're swimming in it, just pay him off. But if you're flipping that die to the side you want every turn, that's pretty bad.
Yep. And then they don't have mitigation generally. Of course, there's a few zero cost things, but if I'm able to get both specials off on Hondo or Cunning, that there goes their 2 resources, and they don't really have a way to get rid of that 3. So it worked out pretty well for me. Yeah, but so that's my Monday night tournament. 6 people. I'm kind of disappointed that we're only getting 6. I would have expected a little bit more of a bump with legacies coming out. I mean, we had that one like big week with like 12 people, I think, but other than that, it's been kind of stale a little bit.
Yeah.
But nobody cares about weeklies for us. It's just my life. So we'll move on to the more interesting
Our
things.
life, Jack. I care, Jack.
Oh, thanks, Dobby.
Notice Shane didn't care, just for the record.
Yeah.
I just can't care because I haven't made it out yet, but
Shane's part of the problem.
So moving on to legacies regionals, we had 4 this weekend. We had the one in San Diego, California with 96 people. We had one in Louisville, Kentucky with 97. We had one in Middleton, Wisconsin with 76. And we had one in Hamilton, Ontario in Canada with 41 people. So
it was
almost 200 people.
Crazy weekend for Star Wars Destiny. Exciting weekend. Lots of variety with decks, things coming out of nowhere, things that people thought were good but really never saw play in a major event or saw success in a major event. It was an excellent weekend for anybody that's interested in the meta. Just take a snapshot of this past weekend and you will have a good idea what's going on.
And also, I can't add, it's close to 300 people, not 200. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we
adding all that up. And there were some good players all around too. I know San Diego had, and I could be missing a few people from them, of course. I don't know everybody's name, but I know San Diego had Agent of Zion, it had Tiny Grimes, and it had Rebel Spy, and all of them made top 8. And of course, there could have been somebody else that didn't make top 8 that I'm missing and or forgetting or didn't see or whatever. But Agent of Zion won the San Diego, California one. And he won it with Hero Vehicles, which is E. Ayla, E. Rose, Ezra. Shane or Tommy, have you guys had a chance to play with this deck or play against it? Or is it more of you just kind of saw the deck list a little bit?
Well, after this past weekend and its success, not just in this event, but throughout multiple regionals, I think it got won or topped in multiple regionals this weekend. I think 3 total. And I said, well, I have to build this. I have to play against this if I'm going to a regional this weekend because people are going to see this. People are going to copy it. That's just the way things go. So what did I do? I downloaded it into my friend Scott's brain, and he took Agent of Zion's deck, and we played it. We played 5. I got 5 games in against it. So I got some good looks at it to see, what it's capable of. And, as Scott was learning the deck as well, he made adjustments, and it was interesting to see those, and I would adjust in return. And it's an interesting deck. It's really neat. It's got a lot of potential, a lot of tools, your rainbow. It's very slow, so it's susceptible to some speed. You can get it with retreat. You can get it with hyperspace jump. It'd be interesting to see, long term if this sticks or not. We know Agent of Zion's a fantastic player. We know Taxter's a fantastic player, just by their resume. So it's hard to say. I don't think it's going to be a deck that's picked up and piloted well by anyone. I think it's got a slightly higher skill requirement to it, a little more so than some of the Hondo, Poe, or Poe Yoda. I think those are a little easier to pilot. I think it's a little more no-brainer. Now, still, when you got a tough decision, you have to make the right play no matter what you're playing, and you also have to read your opponent. But I do think that the vehicle deck requires a little bit more skill.
Yeah, I think Scott's a good person to have it test against too, because that's his play style, honestly. I think he played the Hyperloop deck in the beginning, that vehicle slow type of deck, and shenanigans, so that's a good person to test against it. I haven't seen it yet.
Scott actually, when Legacies first came out, we were talking about decks we were interested in, and the first deck that he said was Obi Maz, that he was just going to build that and play it just because it seemed like a no-brainer to him. But the second deck that he said Rainbow Vehicles. So he kind of had his nose on that from the beginning, that it would be something decent. So he was definitely a good person to test it against, because I think he had genuine interest in the deck as well. He wasn't just filling that role for me.
Yeah, it's always better when you can have somebody that's a little bit more invested in the deck than just kind of autopiloting it. And it is tough to play, because this week too, I convinced my buddy Brian, who has a free weekend this weekend, to go to the regionals in New Jersey. So we were trying to decide what he wanted to run. So I was doing, a little bit of a gauntlet. I did 5-die villain. I did Hero Mill. I did Poe Hondo. And we got to Hero Vehicles also. And it was tough for me. And I definitely could feel like I was playing it wrong a little bit and not as well, of course, as Taxter, Agent of Zion would have played it. But I just felt like if Rose died early, it kind of just felt bad because there goes my resource generation a lot and also prevents me from taking damage off of Resistance Bomber and taking it off of the modified Hawk. And that is just like activating that and doing 2 damage to yourself, even though you have 3 characters and a large health pool. It just kind of feels bad, especially if you only do 3 indirect with it. You're trading, or you're only getting ahead 1 damage and you're also paying a resource for it. So, that kind of just felt bad with it, unless Rose was able to pick that stuff off. But it definitely seems like a good deck. And like you said, it's definitely suspect to retreat and hyperspace jump, but I still feel like it can kind of get past those things. And like we said, the fact that it won the San Diego one, it won Louisville, and it came in second in the Wisconsin one, and also placed another one placed in the San Diego one. So that's a winner, a second place, and a 7th place.
For coming out of almost nowhere, in the sense that, it hadn't topped at any events, and then bam, you've got 4 regionals and it wins half of them, gets second at another. It's an impressive showing for a deck that wasn't, on the radar of, everybody who was just following the top decks from previous regionals. I think it was big. And I mean, there's issues with any deck. It's got a lot of life. So you can actually, deal yourself some indirect and still go ahead, because like you said, if you take 2 and they take 3, it feels a little bad. But if they're a 2-character deck with 21 or 20 health, and you're a 3-character deck, that has 26 health, it's not as bad. Now, also, you might see a Bala matchup where they pick off Ezra or even Rose early. I think she has 9 health, but then that could be a feel-bad situation. That can be a difficult matchup as well. I think it's a really solid, strong deck, and I definitely think that if you're planning on going to a regional, you need to get some reps in just to see what this deck can do. Again, both with it and against it.
You got that, Shane?
Yeah,
play a real
deck.
Deck. Test it, dude.
Yep. I know one thing. You should definitely be losing the initiative roll off with that deck. I mean, what does Rose have? 3 zeros. Ezra's got 2, right? I mean, yeah, Ayla's got the 2. She can swing, but you definitely should. If you're playing a deck that's battlefield dependent and you really want your battlefield, you should be able to get that a solid amount of time, or just get the shields. You don't want to give that deck any more health. So
yeah, and you do have the Republic Cruiser too, which is pretty good. It's got 2 specials, and it can give either 2 shields to one character, or 1 shield to each unique character, or 1 shield to each unique character. So with all 3 of your characters being able to get hit by that, that's definitely a good way if you can resolve that special and then roll out. And Age of Zion's deck also had like 2 cautions in there too. So he's definitely getting shields and generating them. It's just a matter of if you can combo this thing and get them at the right time. And that's how, when I was playing, I kind of felt the same way. It was like, if I got things at the right time, I felt like I just steamrolled people. But, me still getting used to the deck, I was playing it a little awkward at times, it seemed. Yeah, I could read off for anybody interested in the San Diego regional winner, which is Agent of Zion's, his hero vehicle deck. So he had a single die Ezra, Elite Ayla Sakura, Elite Rose. For upgrades, he had 1, and it was Maz's Goggles. And supports, he had 17. He had 1 C-3PO, 1 Millennium Falcon, 2 Modified Hawks, 1 R2-D2 from Legacies, 2 Rally Aids, 2 Republic Cruisers, 2 Resistance Bombers, 2 T-47 airspeeders, 2 tech teams, and 2 Y-wings. And for events, he had 12, and they were 2 cautions, 1 crash landing, 2 easy pickings, 1 entangle, 2 flank, 2 into the garbage chute, and 2 pinned down. So it seems pretty standard. I don't really know anything that I would change with that. First looking at it, I was like, well, why not Chance Cube? That's a really good resource generation. But after playing with it, if you can get a tech team and a rally aid down, the fact that they stack, and if you happen to have the battlefield, and you might not, as it is a slower deck, you're just going to be able to play some big vehicles for super cheap.
Also, I'm not sure that it wants Chance Cube just because I think Chance Cube excels best when you're running a deck where you have an abundance of focus sides. And really the only dice modification side you have is Ayla's special, and more often than not, you're probably going to want to use that in conjunction with the Republic Cruiser or the Y-Wing or something that you can, accelerate that to happen immediately. But
side note, Ayla's got to be a red or blue die. So you can't do it with the Republic Cruiser or the
I am
Chance
stupid.
Cube.
I'm stupid. So stupid. Yeah, I'm not Shane.
Yeah, I'm surprised. My biggest thing is Force Solution nowadays, so I'm surprised it's not in there. I mean, I guess you don't need the health. I mean, losing Rose turn 2 or so is it's gonna hurt the deck a lot. So I'm surprised not to see it in there.
Yeah, definitely the games where I could keep Rose alive is where I felt like I had the best chance because it let me get through my deck a little bit more. Like one game, I was able to field medic her and double caution her, and I kept her alive through
Forever, yeah.
through a lot of damage. So it kind of helped me ramp up a little bit.
Yeah, and this list doesn't even have the field medics. I mean, I get it. You're going to use the
Yep.
cautions, you're going to use the public cruiser, get all those shields, and then hopefully you're using powerful removal. Into the garbage chute's pretty nice. Exhausting Ezra getting 2 dice, but still, it's an interesting removal / healing package. But I do like it. I mean, I love pin down. Yeah, I like the into the garbage chute. I like all of it. It's cool. Easy pickings is fantastic.
Yeah, when I was playing it, I ended up dropping the 2 flanks for 2 field medics simply because your slower deck, and of course you can roll out your supports and stuff first and stall, so to keep flank online. But just with knowing that hero mill is probably going to be a thing, and they're kind of I mean, I guess they're rolling out Riken pretty quick, usually first action if they have 2 shields. But I don't know, I just know flank, or I feel like flank is a card that loses value as the game goes on. So I was just looking for something. Yeah. I mean, essentially, field medic can do the same thing, right? If you were going to flank away a 2 damage die, field medic just heals it. So that was my only change to the list when I was testing with it. But who knows if that's even the right one. So
yeah, because you can flank away dice that are getting modified, or a million different scenarios. But yeah, if you flank at 2 and he's showing a +2, it's different than just healing for 2, because then you're taking 4 essentially.
Yeah, definitely. That's true. So definitely situational, but I think both are a pretty good call.
Yeah, I mean, when you're running Rainbow, right, your removal package should have a million options because you have every card in the game on hero and neutrals that you can put in. So
yeah, and a part of me even thinks, I don't know if that's the right decision, but it's like, what if you just blow Ezra off the board? That way you're taking easy pickings and entangle off right away, and probably into the garbage chute, because then if they're exhausting Rose or Ayla, you're probably a little bit more okay with that than if they're exhausting Ezra.
Yeah, if you're a deck that can burst 7 damage out turn 1 or turn 2, that might not be the worst option.
Yeah, so definitely super good. I'd be ready to see that with it taking, like Tommy said, 50% of the regionals and coming second in another one is definitely something to look at. But before we move on to any of the other regionals, also in this one was Tiny Grimes, and he ended up coming, or he lost in the semifinals, so 3rd or 4th, or whatever, however that's calculated, I'm not sure, but he lost in the semifinals. He was running Elite Kylo 2 and Elite Talzin, which seems like pretty strong pairing already. Being able to hopefully, I mean, we talked about it actually, Tommy, a little bit on the last episode, I think. We were wondering how much Kylo's ability is going to hit off with all dual colored and tricolored rainbow decks running around. But I mean, it still seems to be doing good anyways, because in that top 4, you had another Talzin Kylo too. So
yeah, I mean, it had to do decent. Again, Tiny is a great player. I don't know if the other player that was playing Kylo Talzin is Tiny's friend John Bruno or not, but I think that they were working on the deck together. And Kylo's just a powerful character. You got 12 health. He's an affordable point cost. He's got an ability. Even if you don't hit the ability, he's still decent. I mean, yeah, his dice sides leave a little to be desired. They don't have the upside that maybe Talzin wants to bring to the table. But at the same time, with the blue upgrades that are out there, especially if you're running a holocron package and you have big damage sides or good special sides that you can turn to, I mean, it's pretty strong. So I think that I like the Ewok Village as the battlefield too. I think that's a really good meta call against the Yoda decks and the Poe decks out there that are just generating shields, and apparently mill decks, which are kind of coming out of nowhere along with the vehicle deck. It's an interesting list. It looks like it's all blue. There's not even a gray card in here.
Yeah, not in his list.
Yeah, I mean, and with Illusion and Witch Magic, it's definitely going to be tough and Rise Again. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to kill these characters, and he can probably wither you down pretty well.
Yeah, the only even cost card looking through this is Kylo's Starfighter, which he has 2 of, and he has 2 Sith Holocrons. So 26 out of 30 cards are odd costed, leaving Mother Talzin to do well, and leaving Witch Magic pretty much guarantee 3 healing.
Yeah, I think 26 is like where you want to be if you're going to do Talzin at all. If you want to abuse her ability, that's pretty much like what I've only been playing lately is Talzin. But I feel like as soon as you get to 24, 22, it's too inconsistent. Witch Magicking and, seeing 1 heal is just so bad. When you heal for 3, it's so much of a bigger swing. And then, yeah, if her ability's constantly turning Kylo's to his 2 non-paid side, it's not the highest dice value you can turn to, but it's still great. and she's just a interesting character. So, it's interesting not seeing his resource generation is such a problem with Talzin, in my opinion, when you have all your removal and all of his removal is costed removal. So it's shocking not seeing like a doubt or something along those lines, although normally doubt can just blow up in your face anyway, but I'm still interested in not seeing any zero cost removal in the deck, going with Holocrons and Kylo Ren Starfighter as your 2 even costed.
Yeah, I'll read off his deck list for any listeners real quick so they just have a better idea of what we're looking at. So the battlefield's Ewok Village has Elite Kylo Ren, Elite Mother Talzin, like I said. It has 2 Crystal Balls, 2 Dark Councils, 2 Force Illusions, 2 Force Push, 2 Force Rens, 2 Force Throws, and 2 Sith Holocrons for upgrades. Support, it has 2 It Binds All Things and 2 Kylo Ren Starfighters. And then for events, it has 2 Feel Your Anger, 2 Isolation, 2 Overconfidence, 2 Rise Again, 2 Spell of Removal, and 2 Witch Magic. So again, like we said, a lot of good stuff in there. And I think Tiny, even in his little write-up on Star Wars Destiny database, said he felt Kylo's Starfighter was a little bit underwhelming and that he would think about putting Heirloom Lightsaber in its spot. So it wouldn't be able to be holocroned in, but he does have its Bind All Things, which I'm guessing he's probably trying to save money in the long run, playing upgrades potentially if he's not getting holocrons. So he's kind of trying to save money that way, still playing upgrades, and then still having at least 1 resource left over for some type of removal. But yeah. I mean, it hits hard. It's a good player, so I mean, it makes sense that it's doing well. That it did well.
Another slightly unexpected deck too. I mean, we talked briefly about it last week. It kind of came up. Had 2 players with success in this event, another in Louisville. I think that's all that we've heard of about this deck from this past weekend, but definitely a strong deck. Interesting that it, is a hard counter to itself. It's kind of whoever sees Kylo Ren Starfighter first, I guess, if that's the matchup, if you face the mirror. But it looks solid top to bottom. Lot of sustain there.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, his choice of Force Rend. And if anybody listened to Jedi Trials this past week, Mike, Rebel Spy, he came in 8th place with a Elite Riken, Jedha, and Jar Jar deck. And him and Tiny are close, and they were doing some testing and stuff together. So he was given some insight against Tiny's deck and his calls for that, because I believe they faced off once pairings happened. And with the Force Rend, Tiny was able to remove C-3PO, and he was able to remove 2 second chances. So it's like, that's a lot of resources, but against a mill deck, that's completely worth it. And he was just able to sustain himself since he doesn't have things like, Vandalize or whatever it might be that he finds himself needing. So it's definitely a good flex card in that spot. But I mean, Tommy and I were talking about it earlier too, just in any other matchup, it just doesn't seem
well. It
super
also
good.
Might work a little better in this deck than your typical blue deck, because so many of your force powers have range sides to pair with that modified side, and even Talzin herself is a potential pair for the modified side, and her ability to ensure that you pair your damage sides with her ability just makes the card a lot more tasteful, I guess, where you're not like, dreading seeing it every game. It's still a force power that you can bring in with the holocron and get value from it.
Definitely a good call. And looking at his upgrades, I think Force Push and Force Throw is just potentially a hilarious combo if both have special showings. Force Push to turn one of their dies to a blank and the other one to a really high value side, and then just chuck it at them. Yeah, so super good pilot.
Talzin just turning those dice too when she activates, just always having, activate Talzin, roll in Force Throw if it's on her or whatever, and then flip your odd cost card, turn Force Throw to the special, and just dare your opponent to roll out. It's pretty nice.
Definitely. And if they're mitigating that, then that means you still have Kylo and Talzin's die to hit pretty hard with. But yeah, super good. So well played to Tiny for doing so well with that. Moving on to Louisville, Kentucky. They had 97 people there. And as mentioned earlier, the winner of that tournament was Ayla, Rose, Ezra. So we won't have to dive too much into that. But Poe Hondo came in second. And I was interested to see that Qui-Gon Kanan was in the top 4. He hasn't been seen or talked about too much since Legacy's dropped. Part of it is, is he getting pushed out? Are there better things? Which I do think there are. But also people wanting to play new stuff a little bit more. So, but that's really, other than that, it seems pretty standard. There's a Zeb Yoda in there, which is Kylo Talzin, as mentioned, and there's a Poe 2 Ayla, where the the unique decks that you saw in the top 8 at Louisville. Moving on to Wisconsin, which had a Mill deck as the winner, which surprising. I mean, we saw Mill do well, but for it to go, I think it was him and a partner. There were 2 guys from the Destiny Council that kind of came up with this deck, and over the course of the tournament, they went a combined record of 16-2, not counting the game that they played against each other. So that's a pretty good record for 2 guys showing up with the same deck. So I'll read it off real quick, the deck list, and then we can kind of dive into our thoughts on it. So the battlefield is War-Torn Streets, which is discard a random card from opponent's hand. Then it has a single die General Rican, a single die Yoda, and a Jetta Partisan. And then upgrades has 2 chance cubes, 2 hunker downs, a protective mentor, and 1 scout. Supports are 2 air superiorities, 2 C3POs, 2 scrap heaps. And events are 1 all quiet on the front, 2 caution, 2 easy pickings, 2 entrench, 2 fallback, 1 field medic, 2 hyperspace jump, 2 into the garbage chute, 2 overconfidence, and 2 unbreakable.
I think it's important to note too that this is it's rare that a Mill deck wins any tournament or a regional especially, but it's also a 3-die deck, which in this era is kind of unheard of. I mean, I think the only other 3-die deck in any of these 4 top 8s that we're going through here is, I believe, Sabine Yoda, East Sabine, and then 1 Yoda. So I think that's important just to say this deck still did something, where you haven't seen Big Vader play in months, but you see this deck with only 3 dice starting.
Yeah, it's impressive. And I believe the Destiny Council released a video talking with the 2 players that played this deck, and they seem very confident that this is the deck, the best deck in the meta. They think that this is the number 1, hands down. If you're going to an event and you want to win, they think this is the deck that people should be playing. And that's interesting. That's not something that I think a lot of people want to play against. A lot of people don't like to play Mill, and also I think a lot of people don't practice enough against Mill because it's not a fun experience for them necessarily to play against. So people need to get their reps in against it, and that could play into it. But to win an event, the people in the top cut should have had an idea of how to handle Mill with their deck specifically, and that shouldn't have come into play for that. But through the Swiss rounds, I'm sure there were players that weren't familiar with the matchup that got burned, and now are going to be much more aware of it. But yeah, it's not something that we want to see happen. I don't think you want a Mill deck to take over the meta. I'm not sure it will, but it's not a good thing, I think, for the game.
Yeah, and of course it's a new deck, so it could have taken a few people by surprise. But if I'm sitting down across from this deck, I think hands down every time I'm trying to blow the Jetta Partisan off the board first out of all the other. Between going for any of the 3, I think you kind of got to go for the Jetta Partisan every time, in my opinion. It gets rid of easy pickings, which the Destiny Council deck has that, and there's also potential to run Entangled. But General Riken, his best thing is also having partners. Taking one of them away as quickly as you can also weakens his passive ability, which is discarding a card from the top of the deck for each character with 1 or more shields, other character with 1 or more shields. So if you're already taking away a partner from him, that's less he's doing. And it also turns off, like I said, yellow, and then also turns off the Jetta Partisan's Mill and discard side. So I think out of anybody I would want to turn off, I think it would be the Jetta Partisan. But that's just kind of my thinking. And he has the lowest amount of health.
For me, I think I'd like to take out Yoda. I understand your thought process with the spot yellow and the low amount of health and less partners for Riken, and I agree with all that. I just feel like Yoda's the character that I want to deal with the least in the late game. He's got the ability to change dice with 3 sides of his die. Now, each of his characters only has 1 die. But Yoda's a 50% chance that when you roll him in, he's making that chance cube whatever he wants, and then he's 3POing 3 out of your hand with his next action. And I just don't want to deal with those shields late game from his special. I don't want to deal with him manipulating the chance cube in the late game. I know Riken still has focus sides, but Yoda's got 1 more side on his die to do that. And also, by killing Yoda, you limit Riken's power.
Yeah, I guess I just found Yoda at single die a little bit less intimidating, because even if he is resolving his die as a shield, it's only 1 shield extra that he's getting. Of course, over the time of a game that one shield every turn can add up. But generally, when I've played against it, I've tried to go Jetta, Yoda, and then Riken, because Riken by himself at the end is not too intimidating because he has no discard size himself. And then you just remove or potentially discard C-3PO, and you don't have to worry about getting milled by Riken at all, out of hand at least, unless he's running War Torn and he's claiming ahead of you. That would be the only potential issue.
Shane actually had a similar deck. He wasn't running the red, which is kind of imperative if you're really trying to mill hard with the 3PO just because you have such a hard time hitting the hand. But Shane, I think you were running Elite Yoda double Jetta Partisan. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was, I know Scott was playing a variation where he replaced a Partisan with E Jar Jar, and I believe that works still right, 9, 13, and 8. So yeah, that'll work. I did the 2 Partisans really trying to bank off of getting the Partisans die to at least one of them to hit indirect, and every time that does, that's going to mill 2 right off the top, which is nice. And then I use that new Force ability. The name is Force Meditation, so just a little bit of regular old special chaining, turning that to a special milling 2 off the top. I mean, you can even use one of the other ability with the Yoda's die to mill off the top, mill 2 off the top, it's pretty brutal. It normally got through the deck pretty quick. I was using lone operatives. I was using force heals. I had a decent amount of resources trying to heal. And it kind of goes back to what Tommy was saying. Like it worked. It got a decent amount of wins. You can get out aggroed with that. I mean, I'm not rocking the red package like he had with fallbacks and things like that. And 3POs to make sure you can really mill. But I enjoyed it for the time I played it. I kind of have like deck ADD, so I just take Tommy's cards and make new stuff every week. But it was just one of those things. Each game just gets longer. So if you're playing a mill deck, and when you play Destiny, if I sit down with whatever I'm playing with whatever they're playing, most of the time you're going to play a 15-20 minute game. But when you sit down with the mill deck, you got to be prepared for 25-30 for each game. So I think that's why it's kind of annoying to test against again, because it's just, hey, I'm trying to get 5 games in. Or if I'm Tommy, I'm trying to get 475 games in tonight. And, you can't against Mill.
Yeah, I actually got, like I said, I was testing for my buddy's regional coming up this weekend, which Tommy's also going to. Just going through the gauntlet a little bit with him, we did Hero Mill. And I even thought this as soon as I saw the Partisan and Yoda spoiled. I was like, I wonder if you can swap that around. Dropping Padme kind of feels bad, but I wonder if going into that 3
didn't it get second
die Hero Mill,
Portland?
which was popping up a little bit at Empire at War.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the same character combination, I'm pretty sure got second in Portland.
I believe so, yeah. I know the Mill deck, it came in second, and I'm pretty sure it was this. I can double check in 2 seconds, but I'm pretty sure it was that.
It's funny because a lot of people were talking about the next level, like the way to take that deck from second to first was going to be to play Friends in Low Places, and here we see that it's still not running for Friends in Low Places. And I think the thought process behind that was specifically to eliminate Vandalize from removing your C-3PO.
Yeah.
So, but we didn't see it here. Maybe there wasn't. I mean, you still got to draw the card, and you still got to have the time to play it. Maybe they were milling it. Maybe they were hitting it from the hand. I don't know. But that's one thing that these decks are susceptible to. If you can eliminate 3PO, you really limit their ability to hit your hand.
Yeah, and I think Scout plays a little bit of a role
For sure.
that can go off every round. That Friends in Low Places, you're just hoping you hit it at the right time.
Absolutely, but a die can be mitigated.
Yep, of course. Yeah, and Friends in Low also gives you the option of any 0 or 1 cost event where Scout is the just lowest card, I believe.
Yeah, lowest card. But he's also only here, I mean, at least this deck list from the Wisconsin Regional, he's only running 1 Scout, so it's not like he made that a priority.
Yeah, and Vandalize is a 1-cost event. And if there's one thing that we know is good in Destiny, especially the gentlemen from Minnesota have proven with their World's winning deck that 0-cost cards are good. So you are not hitting Vandalize if they run any 0-cost cards and they have one in hand.
Yeah, and I got to play with it a little bit, and not just red for 3PO, but man, Fallback is such a brutal card to play, and just the look on your opponent's face, because a lot of times you're not disrupting resources with this deck, and generally I would say you're not. So them getting out getting out weapons with the resources they have is very likely, unless you get lucky with the way your mill happens and how they draw. Oftentimes they'll be towards the end of the game, you will be sitting across the board from however many character dice they brought, usually 4 plus 2 to 3 upgrades. So you're looking at 7 dice, which is a lot to deal with. But having fall back and playing that is just so brutal, because especially sometimes you only have 1 upgrade on, right? I might only have a scout, or I might have a scout and a hunker down. Ideally, I have chance cubes sometimes, but it's like you get to keep that, and you aren't too reliant on your upgrades as much as they are to pump out.
You can bounce
extra
chance
damage.
cube back to your hand, though.
Yeah, you could even
with-
do that before. Yep.
Without, you just don't pay for it, bring it back to your hand, all quiet on the front. It's, or excuse me, not
Fall back.
what is fallback?
Yeah.
Fallback is a blowout.
That's a sick combo there.
Bam. Fallback is a blowout. It is an absolute blowout, and that's another thing people need to be aware of. That this is a card that exists. Know how much it costs. Know what it's required to play it. Don't overcommit. Don't overextend. I realize you need damage and you need upgrades to win with most decks, but be aware of fallback. Do not overextend. If you draw your second holocron and you've already got one force power out and you've replayed the first holocron, sit on that second one. Just sit on it. You really don't have to have all of your stuff out, especially if they've got a pile of resources or a chance cube and they're starting to accumulate some. That's it. I mean, it only takes 2 turns worth of resources, and that's a game changer right there.
And I'll tell you the new support, Scrap Heap, which it's a neutral uncommon gray, and it says after you discard one or more cards from opponent's deck, you may exhaust the support to gain a resource. And oftentimes getting 2 out, having a shield on, say, Yoda, rolling out Riken, boom, you just milled cards, exhaust both them, and you're now sitting at 4 resources. And that can consistently happen in my testing. So oftentimes you have to be ready for those big cost cards. You have to be ready for fallback almost every turn. You've got to be ready for hyperspace jump potentially every turn. It's just the resources that it makes, even without Chance Cube, is just pretty brutal.
Yeah, that's a great card. Scrap Heap's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to hit the deck. Scrap Heap is a good card.
Yeah. Yeah, Hero Mill is from the deck, so that's just a no-brain add. And part of me is nervous, too, a little bit when Rivals becomes legal and you will have the Bespin Wingguard, which is pay a resource, exhaust the support, and discard a random card from an opponent's hand. I think that just potentially helps take this deck to a new level, simply because, if they use both Vandalize on 3PO and you have Bespin Wingguard, you're still going to be able to discard a little bit. Of course, it's only 1, whereas 3PO with Chance Cube could be a 3 discard, which is obviously a lot better. But having 2 of those out could be potentially really good. Of course, it costs 2 per turn to keep doing it, but I think you can manage those resources sometimes. So I can't wait for Rivals to make Mill even more fun.
Again, I think as the community figures out how to play against Mill, it will be and Tiny quite possibly ahead of the curve, teching against it before it was, or right as it was becoming a big time competitor. He teched against it wisely with his Force Rend, and maybe that is the move. Maybe I need to experiment with that.
Yeah, and that's something that is on every time, potentially with Talton too, simply because she can focus every time and get rid of that stuff. So definitely something to think about. Be ready if you're going to regionals this weekend or anytime soon. You will be seeing Hero Mill. So
and also, just a note, I'm sorry, that deck beat the vehicle deck, Ayla, Rose, Ezra, piloted by Taxter, who has probably more top finishes in major events than anybody else I can think of, and he's probably one of the best players in the world, and that's a vehicle deck, so fallback isn't even in play there, and that's a testament to those players in Minnesota, that those guys are legit and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think he even faced 2 guys brought it, and I think he faced both of them in, Swiss is the name of the thing I was looking for. Yeah. So yeah, he was, Brian played Nick Obi Taxter in round 4, and he beat him. And I believe, round 6, the other guy, Will, played against Taxter and was also able to beat him. And then come finals, they played Taxter again, and Taxter lost them again. So it's definitely a pretty good counter to Hero Vehicles, it seems, even with a good pilot behind it. But yeah, so any final thoughts on those first 3, the Hero Mill? If not, we'll quickly touch on the Canadian top deck, the Sabine Yoda.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, so yeah, this is the Hamilton Regional winner, which is from, again, Ontario, Canada. And this regional had 41 people there. And the deck list is Outer Rim Outpost, which is claim, gain a resource, and draw a card. It has Elite Sabine and a single die Yoda. It has 15 upgrades with 2 DL44s, 2 Force Illusions, 2 Force Speeds, 2 Hidden Blasters, 1 Holdout Blaster, 2 Maz's Goggles, 2 Second Chance, 2 X8 Night Snipers. For supports, it has 2 Maz's Vaults, 2 Running Interference, and events, it has 2 All-Ins, 1 Anticipate, 2 Easy Pickings, 1 Hyperspace Jump, 1 Impersonate, 2 Never Tell Me the Odds, and 2 Overconfidence. And anybody that's not sure, Anticipate is a hero blue, cost 2, force an opponent to choose and resolve any number of their dice in the order of their choice, then remove all of their dice they did not resolve. That's just, I wanted to read that off because that's probably not a card most people know off the top of their heads. It's probably not played very often. But looking at this deck, my first glance, I mean, again, 3-die start isn't great, but Sabine can kind of help worrying about mitigation because of her action cheating. But the thing that intrigued me the most was Maz's Vault.
Yeah, I know.
Maz's Vault is tough because you don't want to give your resource, your opponent an extra resource also, because it's each player gains 1 additional resource during the upkeep phase. So both you and your opponent start with 3. And now if your deck makes much more use of it than your opponent would, maybe it's okay. And I think potentially Sabine's does because of the Never Tell Me the Odds and all the upgrades that she's trying to loop and play. So, potentially it seems like it's a good call, but I feel like every time I played against Maz's Vault, I've been happy as the opponent to also start gaining extra resources. But if your deck's taking much more advantage of it, it's probably a better call to have it.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how you're gonna utilize it. If you've built your deck to have blowout cards like Never Tell Me the Odds, Anticipate, Hyperspace Jump, cards that cost a lot, then it's worth it. Like we talked about in previous weeks, though, as the game goes on, that resource does less and less and less for you because, on turn 1 you play an upgrade. That's an upgrade that you're going to have out for 5, 6, 7 rounds, where on turn 5 you play that upgrade, you really only used it for 1 or 2 rounds. So the resource has less impact on the overall game. So it's a card that this player probably is mulliganing for aggressively, just so that they can ensure that they'll be able to comfortably play their upgrades on Sabine and be able to stack them instead of overwriting them all the time. And then also the ability to play powerful events as listed.
Oh, on a side note, I just read his description on the Star Wars Destiny database. He said he switched out 1 card after running this, and he actually took out Anticipate, and he put in Daring Escape.
Shane loves Daring Escape.
Nice. Both quality awakening events. No, I mean, Anticipate's great too. I mean, if you roll out, it's like, when you roll out all blanks and it's just, you get a nice feel your anger off and you hit multiple dice at the same time. Anticipate can just do it, but it's just a weird way to do it. They resolve disrupts that they don't need right now, or, resources on dice that they're really banking damage from, stuff like that. But Daring Escape's fine, especially if you have decks like 7th and Tarkin running around there. And I'm not sure what else this regional had. It does look like it had 2 E-Tarkin, E7th, which is just filled with blank.
Yeah, it absolutely could have been even a meta call for this player. He may have had a good idea of what he was looking at and adjusted accordingly. Anticipate to counter Tarkin's 7th Sister, or anything that has a lot of blank sides or even a lot of modified sides. It's good against. Also, like if Yoda is paired with someone who is using weapons and they roll out the Yoda first, you might be able to say, make that Yoda resolve his dice without having the ability to turn dice because they're not in the pool yet. So he's just kind of shielding and gaining resources at that point instead of focusing a Lipo or a Pose Blaster.
Yeah, and it seems like a super consistent version of Sabine, because before we've seen her paired with Ezra, and we've seen her 2-die Ezra, and a single die Kanan, are probably the only versions I've seen her paired with. I did see her paired with Elite Poe and Sabine at single die, but I think Yoda potentially for the 4-speed plays and for the all-in plays is potentially really good with that, simply because he has a double focus and he has the 2 specials, which you probably are using as a focus. So along with Maz's goggles that he has in there, so he definitely has a lot of focus and a lot of ways to just cheat out damage with Sabine Wren, and I can see why it would be a pretty nasty deck. But I think last episode we also noted that sometimes non-US regionals can be a little bit crazy and different from what we come to expect. So I wonder if that played an element to it, that it's a meta that we're not entirely used to, or a little bit different from what you might have seen at, California or in Louisville or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, even coast to coast in the United States, you'll get different representations of metas. It's nice to think that there's a worldwide meta, but what it comes down to is there's good players in every area, and those good players have tendencies, and people will adjust to try to have a competitive edge.
Yeah, so it's cool too, just seeing a different deck pop up. Always supportive of that. So
yeah, shout out to Canada.
Well done.
Good job, Kennedy.
So that wraps up our winners and kind of going through the regionals that were played this past weekend. And of course, I'll do my unique character count that I love putting together for some reason. So obviously 4 regionals.
There's just one notable entry here, and it's one
Jar
Jar
Jar.
Jar.
Yep.
Shout out
Good job, Mike.
Rebel
Let's
Spy.
go.
Shout out to Mike. But yeah, so 32 decks in total, obviously from 4 regionals, top 8s in all of them. And going down the list of the unique characters, there is 9 Potus, 7 Aylas, 7 Hondos, 7 Yodas, 5 Rose, 5 Ezra, 3 Talzin, 3 Kylo 2, 3 Riken, 3 Qui-Gon, 3 Tarkin, 3 Seven Sister, 2 Obi-Wans, 2 Maz, 2 Zeb, 1 Bala, 1 Sienna, 1 Jar Jar, 1 Kanan, and 1 Sabine. So nothing that you guys probably do not know already. Potu is going to be there. Ayla is going to be there. Hondo is going to be there. Yoda is going to be there. And now the vehicles is a little bit new. Seeing Rose and Ezra there 5 times, which means there were 5 vehicle decks, probably in the top 8 out of the 32 decks. But that is just something to be aware of and kind of know what you're going to be going up against. And there's also 3 Rikens, so that means 3 hero mill decks were squaring out the top 8s of these 4 tournaments. So this is just to give you guys a head up and be ready for Jar Jar. He's going to sneak in there. You better be ready for him.
Yeah, I'm honestly shocked that the only 3 Talzins were paired with the Kylo 2s. I feel like she is a character that can go into so many decks. And you were seeing that in the regionals that you guys were talking about in previous podcasts with her going into some 5-wide decks. But I'm shocked you don't see any 5-wide here for at least Talzin builds.
I agree. Talzin is the one character on that list that I think we'll see a significant increase in the future.
I wonder if it has to do with Hondo's presence, because he can almost become a choke type character. And with my very limited testing of 5-die, resources were such a problem because a lot of the upgrades that I have pay sides also. So it's just...
No, that's a sound analysis. That makes sense.
Yeah, I wonder if he's keeping the 5-die in check a little bit, but that's of course just a speculation, and I have nothing concrete to back that up. But that would be my initial guess of that.
Yeah, it's a good spread
Yeah.
of characters. It's a good.
Totally
meta right
agree.
now.
I think we're at a good spot right now in the meta, being our first official weekend, I guess, of regionals. Cool. So that's the spread of characters. Be ready for Poe. Be ready for Ayla, and special chaining is definitely going to be a thing. Be ready for hero vehicles, hero mill. It's kind of crazy the way that things have swung. It used to be all villains, and now I'm saying to prep for almost every hero deck.
Every hero deck.
Yeah, I mean, villains definitely going to be there, and they're going to have good decks like Kylo 2 and Talzin, but it just seems like some of the top decks rising to the top right now are generally hero. And I don't think that means villain is bad. It just kind of the way it is right now. A lot of people are unlocking the codes to the hero decks quicker than we are to the villain decks.
Yeah. It seems like you can just reach your hand into the mystery hat of hero characters, pull out 3, and place with in top 8 at a regional if you make it a mill deck. It seems like so.
Yeah,
I like it.
Speaking of regionals, we've got 5 coming up this weekend.
Tommy.
We got one in Boonton, New Jersey, which some trash players go
Boonton.
to, named Tommy.
Boonton.
Thanks.
We got one in Miami, Florida.
I thought we were supposed to trash Shane. Aren't we supposed to be
No, I
united
like
against
this.
Shane? What is happening?
Get him, Jack.
Well, he doesn't even go to tournaments. That's how garbage he is.
Yeah, I go to Tommy's house.
You go
and
to
just get
Tommy's
playing
house,
a
take
lot.
his cards, and never play in tournaments.
All right.
Essentially.
At least 35% of the cards are Shane's. Maybe
Okay,
40.
there we go. It's moving up in the world. But yeah, so we got one in Boonton, we got one in Miami, Florida, one in Bellevue, Washington, and then we have 2 in Canada. We've got one in Calgary, which is Alberta, Canada, and one in Richmond, which is British Columbia, Canada. So those are the 5 coming up. And Tommy, you don't have to give away any secrets, any special things you were thinking, but just how are you feeling with your regional? We're recording Thursday night, so you have, less than 2 days, I guess, technically, in hours remaining before you go and square off against some good players.
I feel good. I feel like I get to regularly square off against good players. So I think that's key. I have been pretty much obsessing on what relevant decks are and trying to get reps in against them. I've definitely gotten past my goal of 100 games. Not all with one deck, unfortunately, because I didn't identify what I wanted to play early enough. But I think I'm going to play Tarkin Seven Sister. I'm just going to ride that out. That's the deck I have the most experience with. I don't know if it's a top deck or not, but I'm gonna run my version of that, and we're gonna see how it goes. I've learned to play it well. I've learned how I needed to play it in certain matchups, and I think I've been able to make the adjustments necessary to bring my win ratios up in problematic matchups. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. A lot of it had to do with changing my removal package too. I think that was something I really needed to adjust.
Quick question for you. Since you saw the Force Ren making a little appearance in that Kylo 2 deck that I believe Tiny Grimes was playing, are you thinking about dropping one of your... I mean, I just know your deck pretty well because I've played against it probably 100 times, but dropping a different force power for that one?
I don't think I'm going to drop a force power just because I'm low on force powers as is, but I've actually been messaging Tiny and just asking him for some advice, and he gave me some insight onto his thought process behind the Force Rend, and after going over this tonight and just seeing the mill, and it's definitely a matchup I'd like to get some last minute testing in against tomorrow, and I think I'm probably going to include Force Ren in my version. I think I'm gonna give it a spot.
I think you can give it a 1 of, yeah.
Yeah, I think it warrants at least a 1 of, possibly 2.
Yeah. If you're in Boonton, New Jersey, just prepare to be scorched is all. That's the only advice I can give you.
Joe's gonna be so mad.
All right,
that you said
Tommy,
that.
change your deck. Come on, dude.
Yeah, I heard New Jersey will love this podcast, so it's probably going to be all over.
Yeah, it's
it
okay.
now.
Joe's probably the only one listening right now.
Yeah, there's like 4 people that listen. So.
Dude, are the shirts coming in? Do you know?
We're not going to have our shirts in time. I apologize. I know that the Chance Cube's actually going to be there streaming, and I was hoping that maybe I'd do well. Maybe I'd get
just fall
on the
table.
stream, and maybe I'd have our emblem in there somewhere. But I don't think so.
People, I feel like you only have one option. You got to get a golden dice tattoo.
Oh, genius!
Right on your.
You know what? I'm gonna cut it out of like something metallic in my house, maybe like a metal lunchbox. Then I'll go down and heat it up on the stovetop, and I'll brand my chest. How's that sound?
That's perfect. Yeah.
I'll be like Malcolm Jenkins.
I think your wife would
Super
totally
Bowl,
approve
baby. Eagles.
Oh yeah, I was at the parade today. Let's go. It was great.
Jason Kelsey's a madman.
Absolutely. But dude, you should take Joe has 2 golden dice from Gen Con, I think. You should take them and always put them on the corner of your mat.
I'll let Joe do that. That's Joe's style. He can support the cast.
All right, Joe, you're doing it.
Also, just shout out to myself for getting on the podcast before Joe did. I'm just gonna say that real quick.
I feel like that's a shout down to me. It's like,
shout down to Jack.
I let Shane on here way too early. All right. I guess it is time for Shane to shine. We're going to be doing the Jankku Jankyard.
Jankku, a junkyard?
Thank you, Junkyard.
So what do you got for us this week, Shane?
All right, guys. So first off, to talk about the Jankku Jankyard, it really needs to be jank, right? So jank defined is something that is solid. It can compete, but it's not junk. It can't just be garbage. It can't just be the deck Tommy was talking about that I made last week, Magnagard, Ejaba, Greedo. It can't be that. That's not jank. That's junk.
Let's never talk about that deck again.
Oh, man.
That deck, it lasted a game. But yeah, so jank essentially is getting the cards that you paid for, or in my case, stole from your brother, out of the binder or his binder onto your playmat or his playmat, and competing with it. You gotta win some games. So if you're not winning games, then it's junk. Also, one thing to note is getting your opponent to ask, "Can I read that card?" or "What does that card do?" That is so many extra style points in the life of a true.
If you play
master.
Shane, it's 4 indirect damage if you ask what the card is.
Kudos. Yes. It's a passive effect I have on myself. So I guess I'll read the deck list. And I don't think Tommy is, bickering with me during the week that this is not true jank. And last week you guys asked me to make a Thrawn deck sort of and say maybe Shane can figure out Thrawn. And I think it classifies as jank because a lot of cards in it are, especially the upgrade side, some abnormal ones. And if you look up at all these regionals you just went through, you see 3 Talzins and you see no Thrawns. So I'm going to classify it as jank. So the deck list is Battlefield, Outer Rim, Outpost, E-Thrawn, E-Talzin. Upgrades go through. You got 2 Crystal Ball, 2 DH-17 pistols, 2 Force Illusions, 2 hunting rifles, 2 Imperial Discipline, 2 rocket launchers, 2 T7 Ion Disruptor rifles. Your events, 2 All-In, 1 Defend, 1 Dive, 2 Doubts, 2 Fill Your Angers, 1 Mislead, 1 Rise Again, 2 Tactical Mastery, 2 The Best Defense, and 2 Witch Magic. So essentially, point of the deck, and something that Jack and I were talking about, is that Thrawn's ability is way, way better than people are giving him credit for. I mean, I think people give him credit for it. I just don't think he has a partner right now. But that ability is brutal. Ripping a card out of your hand when you only get 5 a turn is very nice. And everyone knows Talzin's ability is also very nice right now. Just insta-turning your dice to whatever you want if you're running mostly odd costs or getting the chance to turn your opponents. In this case, I'm running 26, so same as Tiny, 26 odd cost cards, while I'm only running 4 even. The 4 even are Defend, Dive, and Doubt. Defend and Dive are weird choices, but I'm using that because I believe I'm going to have resources galore. So between claiming at times with the battlefield, getting a resource, drawing a card, Thrawn's 2 resource sides, Talzin's ability to just turn Thrawn to that side. You have the Imperial Discipline to just action, turn Thrawn to the $2 side. So you're really going to make money with that. Whole point of it is in the beginning, ramp up, get your 1 cost upgrades, get your crystal balls, your DH17s, get your babies, get them out, get all your little upgrades, and then eventually turn 2, turn 3, work those upgrades into rocket launchers or the T7 ion disruptor, and especially the T7. If you can get that thing out, it's just going to be brutal. With that out, having that rolled in and then activating Talzin and just instantly turning that into a 5 and just blasting someone in the face, you don't need to be doing damage consistently through every turn. You can just really, okay, if I'm doing 7 damage this turn, if I did 2 or 3 last turn, I'm probably fine. That's going to be almost a dead character. The other thing that's kind of surprising with it is just super quick. So between just activating Thrawn and just hopefully hitting 0 or 1, getting a removal card out of their hand, so you are going to be able to resolve these sides, and then activating Talzin to turn them, all that's fast. But then Tactical Mastery and 2 all-ins speeds the deck up like crazy. So both all-ins and both Tactical Masters, or 2 of each in this case. So if you Tactical Mastery and you have the Ion Disruptor Rifle on Talzin, activate, roll in Talzin, flip the odd cost card, turn it to a 5, second action, resolve, and just blast someone in the face. There's a lot of just quick hitting stuff in this deck. The other thing that we talked about shortly was that it's actually kind of an okay counter against Hondo. I've only played this deck like 6 times. I get a bunch of reps in against Tommy, 7th, and Tarkin. So that deck's been like, I'd say like 50-50. Maybe Tommy has it in his little black book, maybe 1 and 2 or 2 and 2. And then Hondo, I think 1 and 1 or 2 and 1, something along those lines. But when you make
2-1.
2-1.
It's on my whiteboard.
2-1 on his whiteboard. There it is. So when you make bank like crazy, you can kind of just pay Hondo and not really care what he does. I mean, if they do get a bunch of upgrades out and can, make those money shine on his side, it does hurt. But you're using some big removal. Rise Again and Witch Magic just gets the heals going, and it's just a fun deck. So I think it's jank. You guys might not. I need all these faithful Golden Dice listeners out there. I want you to make this deck, sit down with your buddy playing the ultimate meta deck, and then just crush him with it, and just make me happy. Write in and say, hey Shane, I beat him with the jank, and maybe you'll get your first jank badge.
Everybody going to regionals this weekend, if you run this deck and you lose with it, Shane will pay you $5 for every loss.
$5
for every
loss.
win. You have to pay Shane $5. So
Don't you mean that I'll pay $5 for every loss, Jack?
somebody's just gonna show up, just go 0-8 or 0-7 at one of the bigger ones or whatever, just collect $40.
Easy $40.
Yeah.
So Shane, what you need to do is you need to go on the Destiny DB and you need to make an account named the Jankku Jankyard.
Yes,
and after the podcast, you should post the deck with a short write-up and encourage people to give it a shot.
I will absolutely do that. So look on Destiny DB. I will be posting the Jankku Jankyard. And just try it out. I mean, I'm not saying take it to a regional. I'm saying take it to a local, take it to your brother's house, and smash him with it a few times, make him feel really bad.
I mean, stuff like this is what I really love kind of doing on the side, because so many times when I hop on TTS especially, it's like, I don't know, I don't really want to play, if I'm trying to test out meta decks, I'm going to call you guys up, I'm going to call friends up and play in person. That way we could talk after about what cards were good, what cards weren't good, whereas TTS, you kind of hop on, play a game, and that's that. But TTS, I just love downloading random decks and just kind of running with it. So I'll definitely be trying this, and I'll be away this weekend, but we'll do some TTS videos, and the entire time I'll just curse you out for making me run this deck when it loses.
Yeah, every bad roll is probably my fault. So
I'll roll 4 blanks, and then with Talzin, I'll get doubt and just have to keep all 4 blanks, and then I'll be like, Shane, you are awful.
Yeah, see, it does hurt. I mean, I think you do got to keep it to those 4 even costs, because every time you want a Talzin, every time Talzin activates, they're both after you activate characters. They're both so important. So Thrawn, you want to rip something from their hand. Talzin, you want to turn something to a 5 or a 3 and smack face. So
I just don't understand why, if you only have 4 even cost cards, why Defend and Dive would be 2 of those.
So my choice there was So I didn't go with the Holocron package. I went with the T7 disruptor and rocket launcher package, the punch you in the
classic one.
face with guns package. Yeah. So I didn't go with the Holocron package. So in that case, yeah, you need the 2 even cost Holocrons. That's fine. Or 0. 0 is not even, by the way. Everyone out there, 0 is not even or odd number. But I get it. Defend and dive. I have them in there because I'm just swimming in money, and they're just blowout removal, and it's something that it's not great against the special matchup. But like even the special matchup, if you're running Poe Hondo, you're still playing guns. So if you hit a defend or a dive on them, it's brutal, man.
What puts them over block and dodge? The ambush?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, the ambush is definitely a key. I'm trying to stay quick. I feel like Outer Rim Outpost can actually screw me if they are claiming consistently faster than I am. So it's just like a thing where if they're claiming, I mean, and they're getting extra resource and I'm not getting that resource, that's going to hurt. But on top of that, I mean, you can do that removal. You can ambush into either just speeding up your turn, getting the characters out, or if it's that bad and they're rolling that good, just another removal thing. You could even just ambush it into an activate Talzin, flip the top card of their deck, try to change their die. It's just there's a lot you can do with the ambush. I feel like 3 is enough of a blowout removal. If you're really waiting for your opponent to roll 5 melee dice, then they probably should have resolved some of that along the way, or they just got a really one-shot lucky roll.
True that. All right,
But
so
you know,
we'll
play
see.
it. Tell me why I'm wrong.
We'll see how this goes, and I'll test it next week and see what happens and all the rage that will ensue from it. So, all right, you guys have any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to share?
I think I'm good. Good luck to everybody at the regionals going out this weekend. Congratulations to everybody from last weekend. That's it. Everybody have a safe travel if they're going anywhere far for it.
Yeah, bring some jank. Make me proud.
So I'm going to issue an apology, everybody. Sorry again for having Shane on this episode. I hope that you guys still took something away. Next week, I'm pretty excited for it because Tommy will have gone to a regional, so we're really going to be able to break it down. And we're also going to have Rebel Gray joining us for the next episode because he will also be at Booten. So him and Tommy are going to be able to talk about their experiences there, what they saw at the field, what matchups they had, what they brought, how they felt against it, and, you know, potentially if they even play each other in Swiss or in Top Cut or anything like that. So definitely excited for next week. So with that, we've got Facebook, we've got YouTube, we've got basically all the shenanigans that you can think of. We're on iTunes, we're on Google Play. So if you guys are still looking for ways to connect, to find us, those options are out there. And of course, they will be in the description of wherever you are listening. But with that, I will catch everybody next time. Go Birds. Screw Brady.
Go Birds.
BATLESE